Listen, the trumpets have stopped. On the far side of the ridge, men are still running, throwing away helmets, shields, anything with weight, while behind them, on a mile of churned ground, 10,000 men who were alive at breakfast lie still. The victors are cheering. They believe it is over. It is not over. It is beginning. Around every one of those bodies, an industry is about to wake up. A cold, efficient, remarkably well-organized economy that medieval Europe never put into its songs, and it left a genuine mystery behind. We know exactly where Agincourt and Crécy were fought. Tens of thousands died on ground you can walk today, yet when archaeologists dig those fields, they find almost nothing. No bones, no armor, barely a trace. Hold that question. By the end, you will know why. The first wave comes before the blood has cooled, and it comes from the winners. This is not a crime. It is payroll. For thousands of these men, mercenaries above all, the right to strip this field was written into their contracts alongside their wages. And the field is worth stripping. A knight's suit of plate is worth as much as a working farm. A good sword can be resold or reforged into something new. Nothing is beneath taking. Clothes, boots, rings. And when a ring will not slide over a swollen knuckle, the finger comes off with it. Out in the smoke, men brawl over riderless war horses. A trained destrier is worth more than a peasant's entire house. And quarrels over the spoils of one afternoon could drag through the courts for years. All of it perfectly legal. But the looters face one complication first. Some of the dead are not dead. A knight in full plate who cannot rise is a man locked inside a metal box. Winded, bleeding, half-blind, behind a bent visor, listening to footsteps come closer through the mud. The looters carry a tool made for him, a dagger so slender it barely deserves the name, built to slide through the eye slit of a visor, into an armpit, under the gorget at the throat. They called it the misericorde, the mercy giver. Sometimes it was mercy, a man ruined beyond any surgeon's help, begging for the end. Sometimes it was bookkeeping. A wounded enemy is a liability, a dead one is inventory. Which one you received depended entirely on who was holding it. And none of this was chaos. By the mid-14th century, plunder in the English armies had a tax code. Whatever a soldier took, a third went to his captain. Of the captain's takings, a third of that third, a ninth of everything, climbed toward the crown. Clerks kept ledgers. Accounts were checked. A man caught hiding a silver cup in his bedroll was not a rogue with initiative. He was a tax evader, facing arrest and the loss of everything he owned. The Crown of England held a fiscal stake in every corpse on the field, but the sharpest collectors out here were not the soldiers. When the soldiers reel back to camp to drink themselves numb, the women of the baggage train, wives, laundresses, sutlers who have followed this army for months, walk out with lanterns and knives. By many accounts, they are better at this than the men. Where a drunk soldier grabs whatever glitters, the women work like appraisers, slitting open seams and hems because a careful man sews his coins into his clothing before a battle, checking boot linings, belts, the padding beneath armor, stripping the field the way a household plucks a goose, cold, methodical, and for many of them, survival. A soldier's widow with children had no pension coming from any lord. The dead paid it instead. A few hundred yards away, the wounded are learning that survival is only the first ordeal. When Henry V sailed for France with some 12,000 men, he brought roughly a dozen surgeons. Everyone else had friends, prayer, and luck. No anesthesia worth the name. No antibiotics. A knife, tongs, a saw, a bar of iron heating in the fire, and wine or vinegar to wash the wound, the best medicine on the field. Arrowheads are cut free or gripped and hauled out. Barbs and all, a shattered limb comes off while 4 men hold you down, the stump seared shut with hot metal. Survive that, and sepsis and gangrene are so ordinary that surgeons treat pus as a stage of healing. Even here in the screaming dark, the field's economy holds. The quality of your care depends precisely on the quality of your blood. For the commoner who survives his wounds, there is no pension, no land, No grateful nation. That idea is still centuries away. The crippled archer who gave a hand or an eye for his king walks home, if he can walk at all, to a world that pays only for whole bodies. He ends where medieval society kept its broken men, on the steps of a church, palm open. A fortunate few are taken in by monasteries and quietly fed until they die. The rest become part of the scenery, the war sitting silently by the door. Feudal loyalty, it turns out, mostly ran in one direction. Days pass, the army marches on, and the second wave arrives, the people who live here. Whole families walk out onto the ruined field the way they would walk out for harvest, because that is exactly what this is. What they want above everything is metal. In a world where every nail is forged by hand, iron is treasure. Arrowheads, buckles, snapped blade tips pried from the mud, real, spendable wealth. Children work the furrows like gleaners, feeling for barbs with their fingertips. The dead horses, hundreds of them, are butchered where they fell. Hide for leather, hooves for glue, horsehair for rope, and meat nobody asked questions about that winter. Within weeks, a battlefield can be picked as clean as a carcass under crows. Through all of this walk, the strangest figures on the field, the heralds, neutral, protected, honored by both sides. The referees of chivalric war. Their task now is identification, forensic work with medieval tools, a coat of arms on a splintered shield, an embroidered surcoat, a signet ring, a scar recorded years before, because after a melee in 2 nights of looters, the faces often cannot be read at all. After Crécy in 1346, the heralds counted 1,542 French lords and knights among the dead, each one named so a family could bury a man, execute a will, confirm a widow's rights. The commoners got no such service, no lists, no letters home, straight into the pits. But read heraldry correctly on a living man, and it could make you rich. Because the real money on this field was never lying on the ground. The real money is still breathing. A captured knight was worth a ransom, and custom set the price at roughly a year's income of his estate. This is why soldiers risk their lives not to kill a nobleman, but to capture him gently. And why telling a rich coat of arms from a poor one at 30 yards was a genuine financial skill. The ceiling was royal. At Poitiers in 1356, the English took King John II of France himself, and his ransom was fixed at 3 million gold écus, a sum so monstrous that raising it helped cripple France for a generation, and it was never fully paid. And because a ransom could take years to collect, a market grew around the waiting. Soldiers sold their rights to a prisoner at a discount for instant cash to men who could afford to wait. We would call it factoring. They invented it over men in chains. The thousands of stripped, nameless dead go into the ground by brutal arithmetic. You do not give 10,000 men 10,000 graves. You give them 5 holes, long pits at the field's edge, dug fast, often by prisoners put to the spade. Men bearing their own friends under guard? The nobility traveled differently. A great lord's body is preserved as well as the age can manage, sometimes boiled down to clean bone, sometimes packed in salt like fish, and carried home across whole kingdoms to lie in the family crypt beneath his own name. The common pits get a few feet of soil and a prayer. Some are so shallow the autumn rains open them again, and for a while the field remembers what was done on it. Then the field begins to kill again. Thousands of bodies, human and horse, do not decay politely. The fluids seep down into the wells and streams the villages drink from. Flies rise in clouds. Rats and dogs move freely between the dead and the living. In the weeks that follow, the villages downwind sicken with dysentery and fever. Casualties no chronicle bothered to count. Medieval men could not have told you the mechanism. They blamed the stench itself. But armies knew the results. On campaign, dysentery routinely killed more soldiers than enemy steel. Winning a battle and then camping on it was a fine way to lose the war. And the smell, chroniclers reach for that detail again and again. The smell carried for miles. Which brings us to the one field that broke every rule, July 1361. Outside the walled town of Visby, on the Baltic island of Gotland, a professional Danish army annihilates a militia of local farmers, old men and boys among them. Some 1,800 dead in the blinding heat of midsummer, and the heat defeats the looters. Decomposition comes on so fast that stripping the dead becomes unbearable, and the victors do the unthinkable. They shovel the bodies into pits as they fell, many still in their armor. Mail coifs laced. One man went into the ground with the purse still on his belt. When archaeologists opened those graves 5.5 centuries later, they lifted out more than 1,000 skeletons, whole coats of mail, weapons, coins, personal things, the only major medieval battlefield preserved as it fell. Visby is priceless for one reason. It is the field the economy never touched, which tells you precisely what happened to all the others. Because the economy of the dead did not stop at armor and iron, medieval and early modern Europe traded, openly, respectably, in the body itself, and the trade only grew for centuries. Rendered human fat, sold by apothecaries for aching joints and diseased skin. The blood of the violently killed, drunk as a cure for epilepsy, not folk superstition whispered in barns, but a remedy licensed physicians endorsed. At public executions, people stood in line with cups. The hangman's rope, cut up and sold as charms, and the teeth pulled from dead men's jaws and set into dentures for the living, a trade so durable that 4 centuries after Agincourt, scavengers moved across the field of Waterloo by night with pliers and sacks, and their harvest sold in London, proudly, as Waterloo teeth. They did not hide. They had customers waiting. There was one more way to sell the dead. You made them holy. Medieval Europe's hunger for the relics of saints was bottomless and almost entirely unregulated. Bones, teeth, scraps of cloth that pilgrims would cross a continent to touch. An anonymous finger bone, cleaned, mounted in tin, and equipped with a confident story, could fetch an astonishing price. No tests, no certificates, just a bone, a box, and a steady voice. The church saw the problem. In 1215, it ruled that no new relic could be venerated without authentication. It lost completely. Demand was infinite. The supply, from catacombs, charnel pits, ground nobody asked about, was endless, and dead men do not testify. Somewhere in Europe, an unknown soldier who died face down in the mud may still be venerated on an altar under another man's name. Which leaves our mystery, and by now you can solve most of it yourself. Why do Agincourt and Crécy give archaeologists so little? Even Towton, often called the bloodiest battle on English soil, has yielded a single mass grave. A few dozen men, out of thousands. Part of the answer you have already watched. The first waves stripped everything worth a coin, down to the last arrowhead. Part is quieter. In the years after a battle, the church often had the pits reopened and the bones moved to consecrated ground, into charnel houses that were themselves scattered centuries later. Bones left in shallow, plowed soil simply dissolve. And then there is the darkest possibility. Ground bone is fertilizer. And in 1822, a London newspaper reported, in cold commercial print, that the bones of Leipzig, Austerlitz, and Waterloo were being shipped to England by the ton and milled to powder for farmers' fields. Modern scholars think that is probably where Waterloo's missing dead went. Whether medieval graves fed the same mills, no ledger survives to say, but a market that hungry rarely leaves treasure in the ground. The dead were not lost. They were used, some of them perhaps, right down to the calcium. But before this field goes dark, be fair to it. On that same ground, on that same night, there were monks kneeling over nameless men, praying them into whatever comes next. There were soldiers carrying dead friends on their backs for miles so they would not go into a pit alone, and far away in small houses at the ends of small roads, families were watching for someone who was not coming back. Greed and grief, side by side on the same acre of mud. Whatever else has changed in 700 years, that has not